Welcome back to the show, and today, my friends, we're going to be breaking down everything that we learned from the new Gotham Knights gameplay walkthrough. This time around, developers WB Montreal focused in on how the DC superheroes Nightwing and Red Hood are going to play in the game. And along the way, we got to look at some new gameplay mechanics, NPCs, and a whole mess of other details. And of course, I'll finish the video by giving my take on the revelation that Gotham Knights is now slated to be a current gen title only, so be sure to stick around to completion for that. And if you enjoy the episode and love open world games in general, be sure to like and subscribe, as I'll be putting out more Gotham Knights videos as we move ever closer to that release date of October the 25th. But that's enough begging, so without any further delay, let's break down all of the highlights from the new Gotham Knights gameplay video. And we'll start with the new traversal mechanics that were revealed during the 13-minute developer walkthrough, because it turns out that every character in the game is going to have access to the Bat Cycle during the open world sections of the game. And judging by the UI, players are going to be able to summon that mechanical steed by simply pressing up on the D-pad. Beyond that, we saw that each hero is going to have their own unique way of getting around Gotham City. More specifically, Nightwing, aka Dick Grayson, is going to be able to soar over the rooftops with the help of a high-tech glider called the Flying Trapeze, a name which is a clear reference to his childhood circus upbringing. Red Hood, meanwhile, has a Batman-esque grappling hook and has the ability to jump through the air using a mystical Soul Leap ability, which he apparently gained after being revived by a cult of assassins. So just a couple of thoroughly normal guys here. But of course, with a map this size, fast travel will be an absolute necessity for some players, but that's okay because Gotham Knights has you covered with the Fastpath, an unimaginatively named yet unquestionably cool method of transport that will allow you to zip between predetermined points in a somewhat lore-friendly way. But moving on, we also got a better look at some of the enemy types that the heroes will be facing off against in Gotham Knights, including new Court of Owl's foot soldiers who have the ability to buff themselves, and this mighty chungus of an electric street thug who belongs to the Regulators gang. Finally, we also got a look at a Talon Gladiator, and if you've ever read a Court of Owls-centric Batman comic, you'll know that these Bamajammers are going to be some of the toughest enemies that you'll encounter in the game. But beyond that, they're also just fascinating characters in their own right, and I won't get into why right now because, you know, spoilers, but I'm really hoping that WB Montreal portrays them well. And I have fairly high hopes that that will be the case, as one of the most terrifying things about these enemies is their ability to regenerate and recover from devastating wounds incredibly quickly. And we see that ability represented in the new gameplay during a fight between a Talon and Red Hood. I mean, he still goes down too quickly, but you know, they have to gamify it, so I do forgive them. Also, the character design for this Talon is absolutely bang on from the source material, so you can consider me appeased. But let's face it, one of the real stars from the gameplay footage was the environment of Gotham City itself. Now, I've always thought that the Arkham series of games nailed the gloomy gothic feel of that storied city, and Gotham Knights seems to have continued that tradition by presenting yet another excellent realization of that crime-ridden metropolis. The city drips with atmosphere and has clearly been designed to work with the vertical mobility of the characters in mind. In this sense, it reminds me of New York from Insomniac's 2018 Spider-Man game, albeit with more hidden owl cults and aggressive penguins. During the gameplay trailer, we also saw that there's likely to be a lot of hidden areas sprinkled around the main mission areas of the game, and it'll be interesting to see whether that theme is carried through to the larger open world. We were also shown what some of the map-clearing side missions are going to look like, and again, they riff heavily off Insomniac's Spider-Man and the Arkham Batman series of games. More specifically, we saw Nightwing foil the Regulator gang's attempt to siphon off restricted data, and later we observed with Deja Vu as the Red Hood engaged in a car chase before bringing a van to a sudden violent stop and shooting a bunch of thugs in the face with his helpful non-lethal bullets. But moving on, we also got another look at how the Belfry, which is the player's base of operations throughout the game, is going to operate. During this brief introduction to the HQ, we saw Nightwing access the Bat computer to get a look at the world map, which highlighted what appeared to be a bunch of points of interest, fast travel points, collectibles, and missions, and it really looks like WB Montreal have managed to hit the sweet spot in terms of the size of the open world. I mean, it's big enough to feel and look like a city, and yet it's not so large that it's going to become a sprawling, samey mess. I think you'll always be able to look at the skyline and recognize a nearby landmark to give you an indication of where you need to go. And that's super useful for players like me who like to hide a lot of the elements in the HUD to promote game immersion, which incidentally is something that you are going to be able to do in Gotham Knights. But getting back to the Belfry, you're also going to be able to upgrade and change superhero costumes there via the workbench. Now each of these outfits is going to come with its own strengths and weaknesses, and they can be further enhanced by making use of mod slots, which allow you to install further buffs and potential abilities, with rarer get-ups granting a greater number of slots and therefore a greater level of gameplay customization. And on a quick side note, the suit designs here look freaking insane, and each likely calls back to a specific comic book and extended universe appearance. So if you're a DC mega fan, let me know in the comment section below if you recognize any of the suits. Oh, and there's also a shrine to the probably deceased Batman in the Belfry hangout, which will serve as a poignant reminder that the heroes have lost their mentor, and it'll also just work as a nice conversation starter. Oh, and also I will bet you that there is some kind of message or compact plot device hidden in the cowl for the team to discover midway through their journey. So let me know if you think that's likely in the comments section below. But getting back to it, longtime fans of the Arkham series will immediately recognize the stealth combat gameplay mechanics. I mean, those silent takedowns are a dead giveaway. However, beyond this familiar veneer, there are some new twists on the formula, including the quasi-stealth ambush strikes, which make a little more noise than your average takedown, but get the job done a lot faster. And of course, each playable character is going to have their own set of unique animations when you come to pull off these moves. We also got to look at some of the special moves that heroes can perform in open combat once they've built up their momentum bar by landing successive attacks, including Nightwing's elemental shockwave ability, which helps apply status effects to enemies and disrupt their attacks, and Red Hood's barrage ability, which deals piercing damage to enemies to interrupt their armored attacks. Incidentally, by the way, Red Hood also has an unlockable move that lets him strap a literal bomb to a thrown enemy and detonate it with a blast from his pistol. And at this point, I really think that we need to take a good long look into Red Hood's quote-unquote non-lethal weaponry. But of course, with a game as expansive and seemingly varied as Gotham Knights, it's fair to say that the emphasis won't always be on combat. From time to time, players will be asked to look for clues and solve riddles using their augmented reality vision, which is similar to the detective vision that we've seen the Dark Knight use in previous games. Each special scanning mode will see you analyze blood, discover hidden chambers, and find hidden mechanisms, and will generally allow the player to have an eagle vision level of supernatural environmental awareness while remaining rooted in the lore of the superhero crowded universe. In short, the more that I see of this game, the more promising it looks, and that's partially because we're being shown more gameplay features with a higher level of polish, but also because, for me, a lot of the gameplay that was shown in the new trailer was from the perspective of a solo player, and that's how I like to play these games. I just can't see myself using the multiplayer functionality that much. However, sadly, regardless of how you're planning on playing the game, a lot of people are going to have to wait to play Gotham Knights until they can get their hands on a current-gen system, as it was revealed in a news release accompanying the gameplay trailer that the title would no longer be coming out on the older Xbox One and PS4 consoles, and instead would only be releasing on the current-gen systems. Now, this is an absolute kick to the gut for a lot of gamers, as it had previously been suggested that the title would be coming out as a cross-generational release, and that suggests to me that Warner Bros. Montreal were really struggling to get the game playable with a reasonable level of polish on those last-gen systems, and that at some point earlier this year they had to make a determination to simply cut their losses in order to avoid a Cyberpunk 2077 level of cross-gen launch debacle. And let me tell you, that was not a decision that they would have taken lightly. Thanks to an ongoing shortage of semiconductor chips, current-gen Xbox Series and PS5 consoles are still very hard to get, which means that a lot of gamers are still being forced to play on the older PS4 and Xbox One consoles. So it's a split market in terms of hardware, which is why up until now you've seen major players such as PlayStation develop their games on a cross-generational basis, as this lets you tap into your entire audience instead of just a portion of it. And from what we know, Warner Bros. Montreal was also hoping to adopt this strategy, so the previous gen version of Gotham Knights must have been really rough to say the least to force them to abandon it. And that is it for today's episode. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the video, and to let me know your thoughts about the gameplay reveal in the comments section below. Be sure to keep it here for all the biggest news, reviews and reactions from across the video gaming industry.